Okay, to say that I'm excited about this week's guest in this week's episode, I think is an understatement. It's long overdue. Jess Fracalossi, welcome to the Deep Life Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, I've been jumping out of my skin to kind of dive deep into all things health and wellness and fitness with you. We've obviously been friends for quite a long time, but for our listeners who don't know who Jess Fracalossi is, can you give us a little bit of a background on who you are and how you became to be this absolutely phenomenal entrepreneur at such a young age with a vision that you just took off and catapulted? I mean, it's an inspiration. So girl, start at the beginning with who Jess is.
Oh, thank you so much for the kind words. Great. Well, let's see. I guess I'll start with kind of my personal background and how I grew up and some of the things that I think led to the characteristics that sort of have attributed to my wins over the years. And that would be, I guess, that I was born into military family. My dad joined the Coast Guard at a young age. And so from the time I was born, we moved every 4 years. And I was the youngest of a family of three. I have two older brothers in a military conservative family. I was not babied. And I definitely think that having to kind of being the butt of a lot of jokes and sort of just not being babied by two older brothers shaped a lot of who I am and my ability to work with men and to kind of put up with things that maybe I wouldn't have been able to put up with if I hadn't, been born the youngest of two older brothers. But we moved every 4 years. And unlike my older brothers, I was very outgoing, bubbly, fun-loving, love meeting new people and learning about people and making friends. So moving was a benefit for me. I think that I really gained a lot, whereas I can't say the same necessarily for both of my brothers because they have much different personalities and the moves happened at different points in their lives. We stopped moving when I was in 7th grade. So my dad retired. He finished up at the Coast Guard Academy in Connecticut, and that's where it landed at 7th grade. And so I didn't have to move anymore. I could kind of go through middle school and high school in one place, whereas my brothers had to move in high school. And I think it's a little bit more challenging. So yeah, we were in Connecticut, and then I went to middle to high school there, and then went to college at Northeastern up in Boston. And I started college in 2006, and I've been in Boston since then. So what is that? I can't do math. How many years is that?
17.
17 years?
Yeah.
Wow. So 17 years.
Fast, huh?
Yeah, I did. I feel like I'm a Bostonian because, I never really stayed in one place until I moved here. So, went to college, wasn't sure what I wanted to be. I take that back. I was always sure what I wanted to be until I changed my mind. And then I was very sure that I wanted to be that next thing, and got a degree in biology. Wasn't ready to go back to school, which I thought at the time I wanted to. So I took some time off, and I accepted a job with an activewear company. A guy that I knew from waiting tables at his buddy's restaurant. He hired me to kind of wear yoga clothes, go take yoga classes, and get the instructors to wear the gear. And so that is what gave me insight into two paths, into boutique fitness and what was happening in the studio space as compared to the big box gym space. And it also gave me insight into what entrepreneurship was all about, because I was one of four in this small company. And about 10 months later, I was probably working 60-hour weeks, getting paid $20 an hour, didn't have equity in the company, and had just learned so much and butted heads with my boss quite a bit. He really practiced and preached a lot of manufactured urgency, which I don't like at all. And like I said, was losing sleep and I didn't even have equity in the company. And I was kind of like, if this guy can do this, then I can do this. And so I quit and went back to waiting tables and started really thinking about where the opportunity was in the fitness industry. And at that time, at least in the boutique space, spin was taking off in New York City, but was not really in Boston at all yet. And so I started building a plan to bring Spin Studio up to Boston. And
the rest is history.
The rest is history, I guess.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I have really honestly goosebumps listening to you, because just from knowing you and knowing, gosh, 15 years at least we've known each other, if not longer, that whole time in Boston. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I know the work that you put in. And I remember you working at the spin studio, the yoga studio. And then I know the restaurant that you're talking about that you waitressed at. So it's such an inspiration to hear it, because I saw everything behind the scenes. And I think that that's what a lot of people miss, and what I really want to get into in this podcast, because you've built this brand, this empire that's taking off right now. But it took a while. It took a lot of dedication, and you were working your butt off to get you to this point. And now you're getting the recognition that you absolutely deserve. Not that you didn't before, but it's taken a lot. I mean, this has been your life. You've cultivated this to be a part of who you are, and you want to pass that on. And I think that that's such an amazing attribute, because you're not just in the boutique fitness space anymore. You are branching out a little bit, which we'll get more into later down in the podcast. But you started to touch upon it. But yes, if you didn't already, like, let's jump into the Handle Bar and how it started. Because correct me if I'm wrong, are we 8 locations now? Are you 8 locations?
We're 8 locations. Yes.
I mean, oh my gosh. I remember, Dan and I've got to say this. I remember the first weekend that you opened the Handle Bar back in 2013.
Yes.
Which is crazy that we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary, Jess.
I know.
Like, how fitting is this? But I remember, I think it was like friends and family weekend. It was like a soft opening. You were the instructor. Dan and I were like one of like a handful of people in the studio in Back Bay in the South End, first location. And I just was like, it was so fascinating to watch you. So like, let's dive into the Handle Bar and, what made you kind of choose spin? Obviously you said it was booming in New York, and, Boston's right behind there. So let's get into that.
Okay. And I'm like, I have a bunch of notes of things that I wanted to talk about, how the Handle Bar and my relationship with the Handle Bar has molded and impacted who I am, and molded and impacted where my family is. And you're flattering me, and I appreciate that so much. But I hope that some of the more, the details about what it has meant, it's certainly not all roses and butterflies.
Absolutely. We can get into it. Definitely. That's why we say the deep life, because we paint a very, especially with social media, that's what I was saying. We paint a very, structured picture of everything is good. Like your 10 years, like this is who I am and this empire. But it's like, no, man, we've been through a lot, and it has not been easy to get to where we are, where you are. So yes, let's get into that. Be vulnerably honest. That's what this is about.
Yeah. And I definitely, especially on this podcast with the two of you, want to be honest, because so many times I'm brought onto podcasts, like, and not a lot, I'm not on a ton of podcasts, but because of the Handle Bar, and it's sort of a PR thing. And so I have that lens of, let's protect the sanctity of the business and make sure that it sounds good and pump up all of the good things. And as much as a lot of that is valid and true, I want to definitely be a little bit more real with you guys.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, all right, where do I even begin? I think one of the first key points about how the business got started and the shape that it took over the years was the fact that I got investors. And I didn't do kind of a friends and family loan. I didn't do a small business loan. I went and found angel investors. Mm-hmm. And so that was the first year was the business plan and the fundraising. And it took a full year, really probably a full year after the business plan was kind of drafted to then get the money. And then the next 6 months was like finding the first location. But the group of people that I found, it was one person at a time. It was a group of males. At the time, they were in their mid to late 20s, working for Goldman Sachs, and then connected me one at a time to different people in their network. And I ended up with a group of 5 guys who each contributed to the initial investment. They were all sort of in this same New York or Chicago scene, finance, doing very well for themselves. And this was a kind of a pet project that they were happy to get some skin in the game because they too saw what was happening in the fitness industry. But none of them were interested in operating the business. They needed an operating partner. And so that was me. Early on, bringing on that money meant a lot of things. It meant that I didn't have debt out of the gate, which was cool. It meant that I had people on my team who were really smart in terms of finance and accounting and how to deal with the money. And they knew what investors, future investors, landlords were going to want to know and hear. So I got a lot of really valuable advice, in the early months and years. But it also meant that there were people in the pieces of the pie that were going to want more eventually.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just me making the decisions when it came to ambition. There were others who, would benefit if we continued to grow. And so definitely for better through, I would say, March of 2020 was the fact that I had these investors and they could kind of look at the numbers and say, we're in a stable place. Let's think about the next location. Because if it was just me, I probably wouldn't have been able to see the forest through the trees. And I would have been a little overwhelmed by all of the operations and the people and competition. And I wouldn't be able to just look at the numbers and say, yeah, we are doing good. I'd probably be like, no, it's too much. I need to just focus on what we have. So we drove forward very quickly early on. So South Boston opened 2013 fall or summer. And by September or November, we were like cash flow positive. Like we were kind of making enough money to cover everything.
Which is incredible.
Which is incredible.
I mean, that is, again, like, I'm not like your hype person. I mean, it's just, it is incredible.
And I will say, so a lot of that was luck, location number 2, location number 2 was Fenway. And if that had been location number 1, I don't know that we would have ever opened a second, to be honest, because that studio took 3 years to ramp up to profitable.
Wow.
So South Boston being number 1 gave us this confidence because it was like a home run just out of the gate, just pretty much largely because of location. I was
just going to say that. Yeah. Selfie at that time was boom.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, everybody's like, okay, South Boston is cool now. And it's just,
But it hadn't got
exactly.
super expensive yet.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm assuming.
So we quickly moved on to opening the second. And the second one wasn't as easy, but I was managing, and as the business was still overall profitable because South Boston continued to grow and do well, enough so that we went on to open the third one even before the second one was profitable because it was trending in the right direction. Market conditions were good. And so that was by 2015 when we opened the Harvard Square studio. So summer of 2015, I had 3 studios. That same summer is when my dad got diagnosed with cancer. And over the next 3 years, it was just a matter of kind of adjusting my perspective on the business and just life and existence and all of the challenge and pain that comes along with sickness and death. And I took these notes that that was that first phase from 2012 to 2016, really. Handle Bar was my clubhouse. It was, I was designing events and initiatives that were for the target audience, which was me. And I could enjoy it to the fullest. I was single, mid-20s, not single, I had a boyfriend, but you know what I mean? Not married, didn't have kids, was making enough money to enjoy, boutique fitness classes, me and all of our customer base. And so I fit right in, and so did the employees. And I was hiring friends. My employees were becoming my friends. It was very much kind of, we were thick as thieves, just this little empire kind of growing, and we were doing it together, and life was good. Life was easy.
Yeah.
And then my dad getting sick kind of turned this new corner in our decade history, where the business and my perspective, and I don't have to dive into, we can talk about my perspective towards the business later. I'll kind of move through the history and then we can come back to that. But So took some time to solidify a 3-location operation, which is much different than a single location. And the growing pains that come along with that, not being able to be in 2 places, 3 places at once, the identity pains associated with like entering one of my studios and a staff member saying like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, that'll never get easy. That happens to this day. And I'm like, well, I guess I belong here, I think. But, feeling like the Handle Bar was bigger than me, Wow. And so then let's see, from there, the next kind of chapter was my dad passed, and Sean and I decided to have a child, and we also decided to open a 4th location. It had been like 4 years. We felt like, okay, let's do it. Business is really, really good. We're ready to kind of open another one. So that all sort of happened at the same time. I got pregnant. We were moving through this. I decided, with the recommendation of my partners, that we should buy out a couple of our other partners. So we took on some business debt to do a leveraged buyout so that I could have more ownership. These other guys could have more ownership. And at that same time, we took out some money to open this 4th location. And it was scary. And I was like, are we sure this is okay? And everybody was like, your cash flow is X. Debt is good debt if you can support it. Okay. And, the advice was sound that this is, your business is in a place to take this on. So we did, and we did this buyout and got rid of a couple people. I had more ownership, and we had the money to open this new location. I'll never forget. I closed on those loans during my maternity leave, which it wasn't a thing. I was breastfeeding on the couch while I was taking calls with Bank of America.
Oh my gosh.
But Oscar was born, and we had decided that Sean was going to leave his job, and Sean came and joined me so that we could kind of manage it all, manage the business together, manage parenthood together, and kind of start this brave new world as a family. Then, and again, I want to go back and talk about all this and how it affected me personally, but like,
absolutely,
that was soon after a few months, it wasn't going to work. And it was like, our world was upside down. We have this new child. We're trying to work together. Business was great, but it was busy. And I was having an identity crisis of mom and entrepreneur, and, have this new debt with the company. And my husband now works for me. And it all kind of blew up into the fact that like, our marriage is first and foremost. We've got to protect that. Like we can't keep doing this. So at the time we didn't need any more income because the business was just doing so well. So it wasn't a rush for Sean to go out and find a job. So he was able to take some time and explore himself and do some creative endeavors. It was hard. He went through a hard time, and I take a lot of responsibility for that. I'm the one who pushed him to leave his job and come join me. Then let's see, then kind of the pandemic hit. We bought this house, February of 2020. And like I said, we are doing very well. And we mapped out all the renovations that were going to happen, and moved up here. And COVID happened in March of 2020. So that had been our busiest year ever that winter. And then, then the rug was pulled out from under us, and everything got really, really, really hard. And we are still sort of in that phase. While the pandemic is behind us, sort of, we're definitely still in this recovery mode, and the business has transformed so much. But let's see, last couple of things about, I guess, shape and size of the business. Pandemic hit, we did a bunch of things. We got really creative. We had offsite classes outdoors in a nightclub. We did virtual, just any way and every way to make money. And the business, as I mentioned, was made up of a lot of my friends, and I had sunk and continue, over the years to have just put my all into the business. It's who I am. It's who I surround myself with. And for better or worse, I lost touch with a lot of I didn't have friends outside of the business. My family, my closest family, I maintained my relationships with, but my life was in Boston, in the studios. And when the pandemic hit, I started seeing attrition of the folks who had been there from the beginning and couldn't kind of handle the pain associated with the possible loss of the business, the stress of, having to do pay cuts and not the uncertainty of what's to come. So there's a lot of turnover, and it got to the point at one place in the pandemic where I had lost 3 key employees over the course of 6 months. And it was literally just me. And we had decided aggressively to open a 5th location during the pandemic because we got this awesome opportunity. Kind of an instance of ambition getting the best of me.
All right.
We had just opened a 5th location, and I was at a place where I had essentially no full-time employees almost. And everything fell on my shoulders. And that was the lowest of the low, but it opened my eyes to what I needed, which was operating partners with skin in the game. My original investors could do absolutely nothing to help me. They are working their jobs in New York and San Francisco, and, the best they could do was give us advice on how to navigate, government resources and things like that. But in terms of actually who's going to fix the things in the studio, who's going to staff the classes, who's going to train our instructors, who's going to do the marketing, it was all on me. And that's when I started pursuing partners by way of some sort of either acquisition or merger, because I needed folks around me that had skin in the game. And so that was 2021, that conversation started. And then we just closed in November of 2022 on a merger with one of our competitors. And so that's how we went from 5 to 8 locations. Was that we merged with Turnstile, and 3 of their locations turned into handlebars. And now I have 3 new business partners who are working full-time with me in the company. So
just incredible. I mean, there is so much to unpack there. The ups, the downs, the highs, the lows.
Right.
I don't want to speak for you whatsoever, but it sounds like everything happens for a reason. I mean, we're super into that in our kind of spirituality. But it's just so amazing to see this evolution of the brand and how it's evolved over this decade long time, because I'm sure that when you kind of began the Handlebar and had this vision that you took in your entrepreneurial spirit, it's probably a lot different than what you had envisioned it originally. But as we mature, you're not 24 anymore, we're also, so as we grow and get older, I feel like what we learn in the world does shape kind of how we show up, both, within our workforce, our career, and as family, and then when tragedy hits. So I do kind of want to touch upon a couple things that you had mentioned to go back to it, full circle with your dad and then Sean, bringing him into the business, because I do think it's really interesting, because now Dan and I work together, even though we're kind of branching off a little bit of working together too. So I feel like it's just as we grow, so do the things in our life, and not necessarily in a bad way. But like, let's circle back to kind of the role that spin and the handlebar and fitness had in your life around your dad's passing, and how that affected you, because you were very close to your father. This happened really suddenly, and like, talk a little bit about how that impacted you, and if anything shape shifted your mind and perspective about life, and like if there were any different changes that came into yourself pertaining to the business, and then as a family too, because you were obviously with Sean at this time, but you hadn't had Oscar yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So,
and you can go and feel free to say, no, this is too personal, or I don't want to get too deep into it. We'll go with what you want here.
And I realized, like, I just spoke for probably 20 minutes about my timeline. It's like, I feel like I always do that. There's so much.
No, that's what we need. We need that. No, that's it. It clearly lays out this 10-year period in 20 minutes. I mean, that's nothing compared to, I think that it gives a great timeline over everything that's happened.
Okay, good. Yeah. So, well, I mean, the handlebar and the classes and the experience and the people were critical for me during my dad's illness and passing. I mean, when I got the phone call that he had a seizure, I was at a handlebar event on Northeastern's campus. It was big dog 5K. And we had like a little booth set up, and yeah, I got the call, and I started crying and I was shaken up. And then I kind of had to pull it together, and the show must go on at work. And I could kind of lose myself in the energy of the people around me and the music, and, just sweating and all of the things that come along with it. And I feel like that's kind of a snapshot of what it was. It was like, it was an escape, and, but a healthy one, to be able to lean on that. And any fitness instructor or coach can probably attest that, like, you can't bring yourself into your client's session. Like, you have to show up for your client. And I mean, you bring yourself in to some extent, but like the things that are just straight downers, you've got to leave at the door. And sometimes that's helpful to fake it till you make it, and just put the smile on and say that and embrace the positive mantras, and kind of live what you preach. So in that sense, the handlebar was a healthy distraction for me while my dad was sick. But my dad, I would say that, like, my dad's strengths and words of wisdom and impact on me didn't really resonate or take hold until after he died. And I almost feel, and I know people who've lost loved ones often say the same thing, that like their value to your essence and who you are kind of grows as time goes on. Cause you've got these memories, and you learn things about yourself as time goes on that you can then connect to them. Whereas when they're in your life and you're talking to them on the phone on a regular basis, you get kind of lost in the what's right here, right now, versus when that conversation goes quiet, it's remembering who they were and what they stood for, and allowing that to sink in. So that is one benefit to loss, I think, is to be able to have a deeper understanding of somebody's impact on your life. But my dad always preached quality and heart and doing good work, and doing things with intention and not half-assing anything. And, just kind of one foot in front of the other. And he always used Winston Churchill quotes. And there'd be times when I would be overwhelmed with stress at the handlebar, and he would tell me something like, a Winston Churchill quote, like the only way out of hell is through it.
Yeah.
And those words really came to me during the pandemic, like a lot of my dad's teachings, and just discipline. And he didn't care for flashy things. He didn't care for, what was cool, or just kind of an eye roll when I would, the things that mattered to me as a young 20 something girl, to him were a little bit kind of silly. And I was able to take that as I got older. So
I love that. I think it seems like I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but it seems like it was simplistic, but so profound in what he left with you, and those little nuggets, those quotes, the things that, are just going to get you through day by day is honestly what's most important, because, as entrepreneurs, we're always looking to the future, especially like from ourselves, but always the outside people, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan?
Yeah.
And like, I get it. You have to maybe have some sort of goal so that can manifest in your reality. But the only moment we have is now.
Right.
The only moment, this is the present moment. So as long as I can put those thoughts and feelings and emotions into what I want in the next 5 years, that's all that matters. But it's like the here moment now. And I love that was like such a simplistic message that, you know what? You needed that voice to get you through, gosh, the virus that is like shaking the world.
Yes. Yeah. And then, like you said, though, my dad's passing also was my first real, I'd always known about presence and mindfulness. My brother always preached it, but I kind of didn't really fully get it. But when my dad was sick at the end, in the last few months, he actually lost his ability to speak. But mentally he was still kind of there. So you can imagine how agonizing like that must have been for him. Yeah. And I just know that the kind of the depth of the present moment really took light at that point in my life. And so that was a transformative moment. Wow. And then let's see. Oh, and then, so the next chapter was kind of Oscar, and the pregnancy and I mean,
this in and of itself is really interesting, because I feel like right now, especially with this kind of feminine aspect of the universe that we're trying to move towards, as opposed to kind of like we've been grind, go, the masculine energy, which we honestly need a balance of both. Like you can't have too much masculine, you can't have too much feminine. It's really balancing them out. But I'm speaking more in terms of, women who just, they want it all. They want to work. They want to have a career, a family, entrepreneur, whatever it may be. I mean, you do it again from the outside so gracefully. But I want to get into the nitty gritty of it, because I can only imagine how that was, because you had Oscar right also before the pandemic too, which I can only imagine added a very interesting kind of twist.
Yes. And, like I made mention to Sean coming on board, and then us deciding that wasn't going to work, and him not, him taking time off from the workforce. And then the pandemic hit, and then the uncertainties of the future, and the fact that we continue to have a pretty large business debt sitting on us, on our assets. That was no joke. And the societal pressure, I guess, or structure that is drawn out for us to live within was essentially impossible for me to live within, because I was the primary breadwinner. I have a very deep maternal instinct. I have no interest in, I never did have an interest in outsourcing all my childcare. Like even when Sean wasn't working, I didn't want him to be the stay-at-home dad like that. Neither of us wanted that. He didn't want that for himself, and I didn't want that for myself. And not that there's anything wrong with that at all. But these things like then this business, which was very much at risk, and me having to keep it alive while trying to do all of these other things. I mean, I somehow got through that period, and Sean did as well. And he now is 2 years into a new career path, and he wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the time that he took. Right.
But
but
as tragic and crazy as the pandemic was, I do think like if there's a silver lining, it allowed people to really realize a lot of the BS that was going on kind of in the government and corporate structures that just collapsed. And also, like you were saying, the societal pressure to conform to like what people think success is, which is defined differently from every person anyways. So it's, I just love that you have carved your own path in a sense where you're like, F this, I'm not going with what everybody's telling me to do. Because first off, they're all going in one direction. It's not always the right direction. You kind of need to go left instead of going right anyways.
Yeah.
It's so cool too to like look back, like as you're kind of laying out this timeline, and even like your youth coming into this handlebar timeline. It's so interesting how with a little bit of perspective, you can look back and everything makes sense. Where it's like you needed to move around as a child to learn how to communicate and meet new people and put yourself out there. You needed the structure of your upbringing. You needed to have brother, like all these pieces fit together. Then you ended up in Connecticut and in New England and at Northeastern and all these places where it just fit together so perfectly. Yeah. And I wanted to ask kind of, because you said maybe, well, actually, let's say when you were starting, like 2012, 2013, I'll say nothing against you, but I thought you were crazy, like trying to start this business. I'm like, what the hell is a spin class? Like, but at the same time, it says more about me, because it took me another 10 years to realize, oh, I need to go start something for myself. I can't just work for people. And you got it at a young age, probably, you know, because of your upbringing, because of just the person that you are. Was your vision to have like one studio, where I know you said maybe you would have been a little more content with just like a good, successful studio? And then like, because you had other stakeholders, you were kind of forced into building more of an empire. Is that fair to say? Was the vision always to have like a spin empire?
No. No, I think that's very accurate. I think the problem was that I didn't have a 10-year plan. I was like, this feels doable and I see what it takes to do this. So I'm going to move forward. But 24-year-old me didn't think about the exit strategy. I didn't think about what does this look like on the other side. Everything to that point in my life, I had been able to try and succeed and decide. Try and succeed and decide. Is this what I want? Do I want to build off this, or do I want to move on from this? And what the handlebar dealt me was try and succeed, and you are bound to this thing. And you must continue. Yeah. And so in some ways, I do think, and a lot of the kind words that you said at the beginning, Elise, about like how much I have built and like all of this work behind me, like there's the same amount of hours in the day for everybody. But I'm lucky enough that for the past 12 years, my time and my day has gone towards the same thing. Whereas if I hadn't been bound to this thing, whether it be via investors, via leases, via this debt, like I think my personality, my novelty seeking, like parts of me, I would have twisted and turned and jumped career paths and tried a bunch of different things. And I would have had this body of work that would have been much more disjointed. And so I think it's like luck, but there's pain associated with it, and this feeling of imprisonment associated with it. But it has allowed for a body of work, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so powerful. It's so cool how those things kind of happen, where it's just what your path is, and it's all the lessons that you've needed have sort of been there, whether they seemed like they were for you at the time or not. Yeah, everything you've needed has kind of worked its way out in a sense.
Yeah. And you know, it's incredibly stressful. It continues to be incredibly stressful. And the weight of that stress day in, day out, I've attempted to manage and wrangle and decrease, and in many ways through largely my number one mode is escape, right? Is like shut it off, either by smoking weed or, engaging in thought patterns that are an escape. And now 10 years in, and kind of this brave new world post-pandemic where no, we don't have the uncertainty of the virus and whether we're going to get shut down, at least not right now. But we do have this like behemoth business that is vulnerable and it's not stable. It's not always profitable. Each location in itself is not profitable. There are a myriad of issues that need to be dealt with. And so it's like forming this new relationship with this thing. And I'm here because of success, right? I got here because of success, but success has landed me in a place where I often feel like a victim. And even those closest to me know and kind of treat me as such, that I am sort of victim to this massive thing that I am now responsible for. And there's nowhere for me to go. Like I have to take it where it needs, I have to take it to stability. And so we're on our way, right? I kind of see the path, but things are always changing. But I think one thing that this is like, my crucible is like a very dramatic word, but like this is my burden to bear. And I try to remind myself when I feel too much like a victim of like the fact that I was able to get here is so much because of privilege and because of what I was born with. And I avoided so much pain early on in life because of the things I was born with, the way I look, my personality type, and my education, and like those things afforded me yeses. Yes, 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 you can do this. Yes, I want to work with you. Yes, I want to do this. And so those yeses built this thing around me that I now have to carry. And so when I do kind of feel like a victim, I just remind myself that like every struggle is unique, but no, every struggle, it's all relative, right? Some other, young woman's inability to find a job or find a relationship or, that pain and that burden is just as big to bear as the one that I have carrying, this successful empire, or what have you. So I don't know, it all comes back to like how equal we all are, right? And how our existence is just so intertwined. And especially when you stop to just breathe in the moment, that we're a pulse, we're the air in our lungs, and that's enough. We just kind of continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful way to put it. And it's like the worst thing that happens to any of us is the worst thing that happens to us. So like you can't really judge somebody else's burden.
Yes.
Like that same person that you're talking about who's maybe struggling to get a job or struggling to find a relationship are in the exact same position you would be if you had their DNA and their upbringing and their life experiences.
Right.
Same way that like if I were you, I'd be in your position, but it's all just a different perspective of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think the way you put it was so
beautiful. And I love that you have this perspective of it, because we all are connected, and like us as humans are all one. We're all first off, we're all just trying our best.
Yeah.
Which I think is simple but complex at the same time. And I want to know, through this whole, decade long handlebar excursion, but like even further than that, and kind of like to present day, how would you say, like, has your relationship with fitness kind of stayed the same or changed, being in the boutique kind of fitness aspect as opposed to like the big box gyms? Like kind of talk about that a little bit. Let's kind of get into that, because I do want to, because Dan was in big box gyms, which is complete opposite from like this boutique. It's really a community that you have cultivated, which is so different than the grind that Dan was in. So I've seen him, but then I've seen yours. So let's talk about kind of like the difference and kind of your relationship to fitness now, as opposed to what it was when you first started the spin studio.
Yeah. I oftentimes feel like a fraud. When it comes to the fitness side of things, because I have always enjoyed working out, but I've never had like an expanded like relationship with fitness. Like I don't know.
What you mean.
You know what I mean?
I feel the same way, because if we're talking about like Dan and Sean, who like grew up playing football, like at a high Division I level, and they were playing it for years since they were little people, and they've lifted weights for 20 something years. And I feel very much the same way. I feel very much like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Like I am newer into the health and wellness space than him. So I think like I very much understand what you're saying. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
yes, like I've never truly like set and achieved fitness goals.
Yeah.
I've never set out to, lose weight by way of XYZ plan or build. There was a little period during COVID where I was lifting, and, that was great and that was fun. But I think that for the most part, for me, it's been about fitness has played into just my overall balance, and it has been just as much mental as it is physical. It's about getting in there enough to stay balanced. And it's sort of my approach, or what my approach has been. And what I'm really trying hard, and I'm starting to see a shift, is I almost had always used fitness as like a defense to fend off the stressors of the world. Is like, it's there for me to just go. And like I said, just do enough to keep the devil at bay, and now I'm starting to think about fitness and nutrition and mindfulness, as a tool for enjoyment, pleasure, self-care. And it's still very challenging, but when I get tastes of it, I know that that's what I want for myself. That sounds bad. I sound like because it's like, I need to be able to create the space and the time to focus on me. But that really has not happened in the past 10 years. Like that has been like, I get in there and I do it either because I'm teaching a class or because I need to get to somebody's class because I haven't seen them in a while. Like the actual fitness piece for me at the Handle Bar ends up being a lot more social. Like I teach the class or I take the class because it's like expected of me to engage with the employees in the community versus it being, I don't know, like an outbound effort for me to stay well or to be well or to reach goals. But I'm shifting that and I want to take control. I'm in the process of taking control of my health and wellness and and part of that right now is I'm in this sort of like walls up. I'm really not going into the city a lot because I'm trying to sort of to root myself in wellness here. And when I go into the city, it becomes social, it becomes expectations, it becomes, what do you have to say, Jess? What's going on here? Like this sort of complex thing that doesn't drive any goals forward. So sort of taking some time away so that I can find my wellness plan and build my wellness plan in a sustainable way that works for the long term. And then kind of like, then I'll uncover what the Handle Bar, what place it takes in my life. I don't know if that makes sense. That was a long roundabout way of telling you.
Yeah, I think it absolutely does.
It 100% makes sense. And I mean, you're talking to us, which again, but I feel like almost like what you're doing right now, kind of like in this almost like growth bubble of your own is like what Dan and I did in LA.
Yeah.
So it took us legit 8 years in LA without anyone near us. I mean, we had to move across the country to find out who we were without everybody telling us who to be.
Yes.
And that's like where we tried to find ourselves. Like I I mean, I've been through a plethora of jobs because I've gone through everything that I don't want to do, but it's like, at least those have taught me what I don't want to do. And now I have much more of a clearer vision what I do want to do, but you almost have to tune out the noise.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like that correlates to the city. It's the same thing. I mean, I miss living in a city so much, but then when I'm in the suburbs, it's like peace and quiet. And it's like, I can hear my own thoughts, and my thoughts are my teacher. Like, I have to listen to the voice in my head, whether it be good or bad, because most of the time it's bad, but those are still teaching me. Like, I have these bad thoughts, these reoccurring, anxieties and stressors. But if I keep pushing them down and down and down, they're not going anywhere. I have to be able to deal with them and release them. And then whatever version of myself comes from those thoughts that I've worked through and integrated is going to be the next version of me. And I think that that's kind of where you're on this like amazing cusp.
Yeah.
You've figured out like, all right, I've been in this for a decade now. I've changed so much. My life has changed so much with my husband and my child, and, a post-pandemic, like you're almost like in this identity crisis now.
Yeah.
But it's like exciting to see like what's going to happen next, because it's like you can almost work off a blank slate.
Yeah, exactly. And I now and it was a path that I had started right before COVID by us moving up here. It was creating that physical distance,
yes,
so that we could I could figure out who I was and what the handlebar was in relation to me, rather than being inside of this sphere, or this like that's constantly pulling me in. Create that physical distance. The pandemic was a hiccup, right? It pulled me right back in. Longer commute, but I had to be in there. And just all of this plethora of new challenges that it brought with it. And now that the merger is done and closed, and we're like 4 months into it, there's still a lot, but I do have this hope that I can kind of pick up where I left off, which was putting the handlebar in this very healthy box that I'm able to lift the lid on and close the lid on, as I need to care for myself, because a balanced me and a creative me and a active me and an involved me with my friends and my family outside of the handlebar is a me that has clarity. And that's the person that's really going to make the best decisions for this beautiful entity that lives in this box, So that's the way that I'm trying to get back to.
I love that.
Yeah, that's great. When you're talking about fitness, as you were originally like trying to push things off, and whether it's like therapeutic or it's health and like pushing off disease or pushing off, body weight or whatever it is that what you see in the sort of group fitness realm where people are coming in? Do you think there's like a disconnect almost between health and wellness versus what we see in the fitness community and kind of fitness industry in general?
It's tough because it's a drastically different side of things when you talk about instructors versus the participants. It's different. And instructors and then my role as an instructor, and then my relationship to these instructors, who are the greatest asset of our business, and they're incredibly valuable, versus the individuals. I think that the consumers on a whole are seeking group fitness just like they would, and getting out of group fitness some of the same things that they get out of, doing yoga by themselves, meditating, working with a personal trainer. It's routine, it's connection, it's mindfulness. It's the things that we know to be most important about fitness. But the group fitness scene has this very special role, and that's the instructor. And there is this element of celebrity, this element of clout and stage presence and entertainment that comes along with that. And Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe circle back for me.
No, I think it does. And I'm sorry to like put you on the spot necessarily, but there's something that I've kind of seen through working in fitness for a long time and talking and interviewing a lot of different trainers where, and I know it's a little bit different, but like talking to like personal trainers and coaches where there's a lot of, they'll be kind of obsessed with fitness and then they're coaching people and then they get to a point where it's like, I don't want to just like count reps anymore. I don't want to just tell somebody to exercise because you realize, or I know I realized like over and over that it's these people's kind of mindset and the way they see the world and the way they carry themselves in the world.
Yeah.
Is what needs the work.
Yeah.
More so than so many people come like, we'll hire a personal trainer because they need somebody to punish them in a sense.
Yes.
Yes. And I think you see it in a lot of the classes, like I've noticed it too, where people are like almost like going in to do their penance and get punished for the things they're doing outside of fitness and their lifestyle. Yeah. Where I think like what you said is so beautiful, but like coming at it from a whole different place of like, I'm just going to take this time for me. Basically, like, because you love yourself, you want to care for yourself and your well-being. And then that allows you to show up in the rest of your world rather than go show up in the world and then go find fitness to punish yourself. And I just think it's interesting.
There's definitely some of that, and I see it in the way people talk about post things after class. And it's always like, some people are always saying the same thing. Like, you killed me on that 90-second run and this XYZ, it wasn't going to make it through this, and this. And they're kind of like preaching about the benefits of the class at the most intense, the moments that punished them the most were like, that's what they came for. Versus there is a large part of our community that, where that's not the case. And I think that that's unique. I honestly think it's unique to the Handle Bar.
I was just going to say,
I was kind of thinking,
I was going to say that just from, obviously we took classes when we were in Boston, literally the year that you opened it, but then we left for California and have been there. In those couple classes we took, and I've taken other group classes and have been to like Soul Cycles and Berries, and it's much different. Like if you haven't been to a Handle Bar spin class, like you have to go to experience it because it's not like military. It's very like upbeat. It's different. It's like very accepting in a way.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a spin person. Like, and you know this, like I'm more of like a weights circuit person. And so I felt very comfortable there where it can be intimidating to go to group classes, but the Handle Bar is so unique in the community aspect that it's almost like a calming presence because everybody's so excited to be there.
Yes.
And that's really, I do think, a testament to you and how you built this brand, because I don't think that wasn't luck. That comes from you. You have a genuinely like amazing heart. And I'm not saying that because I'm like a close friend of yours. I think that it makes its mark. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, probably because I'm a fraud and I don't know anything about fitness. I can.
That's going to be the caption. Jess is a fraud.
No, but seriously, clients will come up, like during class and like, or after class and ask about whether it be some technicality about their heart rate, during the ride, or what, trying to lose weight and what I would recommend they do. And I piece things together to kind of, I know enough to just say something, but it's in those moments where I'm like, ooh, no, this isn't the place for that. And I know my instructors are the same way, most of them, where it's like, we're not going to be able to hold your hand on a weight loss journey. We're going to be able to show up for you and be present with you as a healthy place to, connect and move your body and expend negative energy. And that can be enough. That can be enough.
Right. I was just going to say that's honestly like warms my heart. And I feel like what I want to see the fitness industry almost like achieve, like you're setting an example that's so amazing, because like Dan was saying, I feel like people use fitness as like a punishment. And it's like,
it's not sustainable. It's like, well, what's the end game? You're going to
exactly. Like, I haven't weighed myself in years. I don't know, like my BPM or anything like that, or like how many, like, it's also like, the macros, like I've counted them. It's like, who wants to live their life like that? I mean,
Right.
of course, if you're trying to, achieve a body composition for, a competition, or you do have severe health issues and you need to lose weight, of course, there's time and place for that. But like to live your life to the best, to the fullest,
yeah,
it's like just not sustainable.
Right. Right. And that's one of my qualms with fitness. And I mean, as much as we are about wellness and mental wellness, as much as we are about fitness, I still see it as this sustainability piece of like, it is an intense workout. And it's like, I really, we developed a class called Cycle and Strength, and a lot of that has sustainability in mind. It's like, I really, as I get older, like I want to be able to be coaching a class that people can do forever and can scale with themselves as they grow and age and change. And, but it's a challenge because it's not what really is like hitting home for a 28-year-old who is seeking that intensity is not going to be the same workout that, a 45-year-old with some sort of health condition or ailment can go in and enjoy. So it's this balance, but I see that in the fitness industry all the time. It's just like, where's the end game? Like if you're talking about gains and cuts and like these things, it's just like, well, there's only so if you're actually doing those things, there's got to be a peak, and then what? So
exactly. Yeah, I think you hit it on the head.
So everything happens for a reason. So like maybe you are in that position so you can change the industry.
Yeah.
Because you needed somebody who wasn't, meathead or like obsessed with grinding to change people's perspective a little bit. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, that would be great. I hope to have enough bandwidth soon. Right now it's like still a bit of underwater with the merge, but hopefully coming out above water and be able to say like, all right, let's get back to our mission and how are we driving that mission?
Okay. I was just going to say, as we wrap up so we can let you go, I kind of want to just touch upon, what is the mission? Yeah. What's the mission? And like, kind of where do you want to have your like legacy go right now personally and with the business? Like, is it kind of just living in the moment, like you were saying, and not having that 10-year plan, or is it something different?
It's definitely on reining in the, reining in what sustainability is. And I think the pandemic helped that because we were on this growth mode, both in studio locations, revenue, riders served. It was like for 7 years, it was 20% up, 20% up, 20% up, like just grow. And then this plummet with the pandemic. And now we're kind of back to this place where we have to rebuild, but now we know where we came from. So it's like, it's not going to be this limitless journey of growth. I really can see what I want for the business and for my legacy. And it's about impact and impact on the individual lives. So the career of an employee, what did they get from their employment with us, and what impact did we have on their story, impact on the rider, what doors did we open for that rider in the sense of making connections, finding meaning, building relationships. And then importantly, and where my head's at, is impact on the local communities, because so much of what we do is not just the class. The class is what pays the bills, but what keeps people coming back to the business is a belief in who the brand is, the authenticity. And I know that to be true now, that it's not wasted time to strengthen the brand and strengthen the who we are message and practice what we preach, which is about mental wellness and the power of community and the impact that community has on feeling accepted, being okay in your own skin, being okay with your own mental health struggles. So I guess what I want my legacy to be is I think it's local. I used to think, let's grow outside of Boston because then I could if you can grow in a new market, you can more easily sell the company. But it has just been such a blessing to be able to focus on Boston and Cambridge, and not have to think about like maintaining or growing somewhere else. So I think it's greater Boston, you know, maybe eventually we move outside of the city lines, but a place where other businesses and, like I said, the individual employees, the individual riders, and then our neighboring community of small businesses can use it as a jump off for self-betterment, for growth. We really are blessed that like there's so many people that come through our doors that we can spotlight another small business and really like just help them. Like it catapults people their way. And so I get to do a lot of this sort of benevolent work where we're featuring other companies, and it's not for us to put money in our pockets. It's just to like spotlight them and give them a platform for growth. And the way that it comes back to us is that the community and our customers see it as authentic, you know, and they're like, well, we want to keep riding here because they do these things, you know?
Absolutely. I love that. And I think that it's like on a deeper level, just like looking at that, I think that is so amazing because we've come from this narrative of we're all separate. We're all separate humans. We're all separate businesses. We're all separate families. It's like that model obviously isn't working anymore. I mean, look at what's going on in the world. So, and I think that that's where the impact is going to come from. Like you can't just unite the world right now, but it's starting small, it's starting local, because once that happens in a community, in a town, it's going to branch out. And it's almost like your vibration, your frequency is just going to keep going and going and going, but you're starting at almost like at the core, at the center, and like moving outwards. And I think mission and like what you have as a perspective and how you've grown your perspective over the past couple of years is just tremendous. And you're shifting and you're changing with the times. And I think people are recognizing that. And I think that if anything, like I'm just so excited to be here in Massachusetts for this kind of, new evolution of you and the Handle Bar and, your merger and how it's going to come play out into the world. Cause I think like really miraculous things are going to happen. So, I mean, kudos to you. And really, this is, I think, one of many podcasts because we didn't even get into a lot of the mental health stuff and
consciousness. I had all these notes about consciousness.
But well, that's what I was going to say. Like, luckily now we're right next door. We're here for the foreseeable future, so we can continue our conversations on here. But we can't thank you enough for coming on and just honestly sharing your vulnerability and the struggles, because it's not something that everybody talks about, and that's one of the biggest reasons we started the podcast. So thanks for being you, for shining your light and kind of just inspiring others to do the same.
Thank you, guys. This was so fun. Thank you for doing what you do.
Yes.
More and watch you guys grow.
We're just trying to keep up with you.
No, we're all playing our own game, part of this one big magical journey, right?
Absolutely. We are.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to see you guys again.